Hello and welcome, boys and girls, to our Conlang stream. We haven't done a topic live stream like this in a while, but now we get to kind of get back to our roots, so to speak. Please allow me to welcome my guests. First off, Drake the Duelist.
He's going right for the crew!
I was doing conlang before I knew conlang was a thing.
And also, the wonderful Carl Saylor. Welcome him to the stream, please.
Пролетарии всех стран, соединяйтесь!
Alrighty. Well, we've got a bunch of people in the chat. Hello, Johan. Hello, Rebecca. Becca. Hello, NT Freeman. Occupation Army. Wise Wolf. Neph Champion. Always a pleasure. Nice to see you guys. So this is mainly, I'm going to be kind of sitting back quite a bit in this one. Since like if I'll use like a conlang, I'll mostly just kind of just use like a vague word or just say like they understand it, I guess. So that's, or at least like just say that there is an additional language rather than creating an entire language. So maybe I'll do it in the future, but as of right now, I haven't really done much in that way. So I'll just let you two experts talk about it.
I'm flattered to be considered an expert.
You're as close to an expert as we have in the current Discord pool of people.
Fair
so
enough.
that makes you an expert. Yeah. So kind of just to kind of discuss like a conlang, it's just a constructed language essentially. But how exactly do you make a constructed language, and what are the possible benefits?
Well, you have to consider what is a language, or rather, what is the purpose of a language. So we get things like why do we write stuff down? Why do we talk to other people? Why do we make art in when we talk? Why do we write poetry? Why do we sing? That sort of thing. And basically, that's going to determine what your conlang is used for. A lot of times, you're not going to be you don't expect to drop this whole dictionary on your readers. You just want it to be something to add a little bit of spice to the world. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just need to create some place names or name a few characters in ways that are kind of symbolic in a way. Or maybe there's a prophecy with some tricky fizzicky little grammar that apparently that word has no gender, so it could be the prince or princess that was promised.
Okay.
And I'm giving everyone a moment for the Game of Thrones flashbacks to subside.
Well, speaking of which, we have our third and final guest coming on. Aloha.
Hello, Count.
The curmudgeon of doom has arrived.
Yes.
Ready?
So,
please.
Go ahead. Conlanging in general. What is, and so really, generally speaking, you're gonna wanna figure out what you need from this conlang and why you're putting it in there. That's basically how you go about it, because that's going to determine whether you just need, a system of vocabulary, just a few words here and there, or if you actually need to create a system of etymology, an affix pool, a grammar system, and the pragmatics that go along with it.
Yeah, there are some successful works that have not had a full-fledged language. Song of Ice and Fire has a few words in Dothraki and a couple of sentences in Valyrian, and it works fine. So you can do that. You don't have to create a whole language if that's too much work. But the words should be plausible linguistically.
Yeah, they should have similar nomenclature.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're not just, coming up with some nonsense and putting subtitles under it.
Yeah, which is...
Speaking of nonsense and putting subtitles under it, Klingon. That is how the Klingon language originated. In I believe it was the third Star Trek movie, the opening scene has some... Hello, Grant. The opening scene had a bit of Klingon dialogue, and I think Scotty, the actor who played Scotty, James Doohan, he just came up with a bunch of random guttural sounds, and the writers said, all right, we just need some sounds, and we'll put the subtitles under them. And that was that.
Yeah.
And then when they were going back to flesh out the language, they said, okay, we are going to retroactively fill out this language, but those sounds have to mean exactly what the subtitles said.
That's very sound, yes.
Yeah, that was a pretty clever bit of backwards compatibility going on there.
I would have to agree, for sure.
Yeah.
Klingon is just the master of backwards compatibility. They even incorporate mistakes that writers have made throughout the years. I forget which episode and series this is in, but there's one scene where a Klingon is greeting his friend and he says, "Hey, hail, my friend," but the way he says it, he's saying is basically "Hail, my friend, who is an inanimate object." And in some other series shows that don't really have that same level of continuity dedication, they would have just said, "Oh, that's just a goof. We'll leave it in there." Oops, joke's on us. But no, Star Trek, they had their writers go back and they said, "Oh, he said that because he was doing an insult, and that's a sign of intimacy among comrades." Like we might say, hey, you old bastard, how you doing, son of a bitch? They couldn't keep you out of hell long enough.
Yes, or your soul to the devil, they used to say in Ireland.
Yep. It's a crazy stuff they've been able to do.
Yeah. There's a contrary example from Star Wars in David Peterson's book. I'd have to go and grab it. I don't have it on me. Where like Yato or Yoto means like 5 different things at least that have nothing to do with each other because they just couldn't be bothered apparently.
I was about to bring up Star Wars, where it's just like there is no consistent language in that whole series.
I just always assumed that it was like some subsonic, like a sound wave thing that humans physically can't perceive.
Well,
it's a dog whistle.
Yeah,
the stuff with the Elcor in Mass Effect, where they communicate their emotions through subsonics and scents and subtle bodily movements that humans can't perceive, and so they have to preface every statement with an emotion. Genuine query: did you understand that?
Yeah, I I honestly have no idea. I just friggin' Huttese doesn't make any sense from a nomenclature point of view. Neither does any of the other languages. It's just mainly like a series of nonsense languages in a lot of ways.
And that is that's like the discount version of conlanging, where you just come up with nonsense, and as long as it sounds foreign,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is bad. Don't do that, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't just go. Blah, 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 blah.
Don't do Nicolas Cage from. Don't use Nicolas Cage from what is it? The Crudes, and say oogada boogada boogada, and just make that your entire language.
Or do like one of those revival preachers speaking in tongues.
That's a wow. That I've seen like a video of like where they just like, that's the power of the Holy Ghost, and just people are falling over as if they've been hit by a Gatling gun. It's really freaky and hilarious.
No, I want to actually go to one of those things and like try to speak in tongues, but I'm actually gonna like prep a whole speech in Russian about how Satan is coming to sodomize everyone. That would just be hilarious.
Yes.
Does anybody know how Stitch works?
Oh yeah, Neph, so much. That's such a good point.
Yeah,
I
he's like
remember
great.
reading somewhere that apparently Greedo was talking in I think Quechua. That's the language of the Inca, and they just gussied it up with a few little crazy sound effects, and fine, done and dusted. So now I imagine there's some old Inca couple, finally getting around to seeing, hey, what is this this Star Wars thing? I heard this was pretty fun. And then all of a sudden, this alien comes along and starts. Wait a minute, why can I understand that? What's going on here?
I feel like
Why is he an alien?
I feel like don't base your language on Nicolas Cage. You'd be in the 11th commandment. No, that'll be 12. 11th is don't be stupid.
Pretty much covers it all.
Yeah. True. Alrighty. I think that's
I think we're ready to move on.
Alrighty. So the next one is like conlangs of fantasy / speculative fiction, and we've covered.
I'm sorry. Can I just mention one thing? David Peterson's book, if you want to conlangs, that's the one to get. The Art of Language Invention by David J. Peterson. He's a chap who came up with Dothraki and Valyrian languages in Game of Thrones, and he's also done languages for science fiction series as well. So that's the chap.
Yeah, I think he also did Na'vi for Avatar.
Yes.
And
didn't he also? I think he was doing some stuff for Long Night as well.
Yes, he did those the language of the Children of the Forest. But actually, I'm not sure he did. I'm not sure. In retrospect, I'm not sure he did Na'vi. I think that was someone else. He did Castithian and oh god, I can't remember the others were named. I'd have to grab the book. But anyway, that's it explains all these linguistic concepts in a very conversational, almost too conversational possibly, but style. But at least it's not intimidating, except every now and then where he explains how he did the Castithian script, and that's a little messy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
In fantasy, yes, this is a good idea of looking at it. Now, this is a good this is good because Lord of the Rings, the Elvish language. Tolkien, when he died, he did not have a complete grammar of the Elvish language. He had all these different glossaries and like lists of words and affixes and things like that. But he didn't really have a whole lot of completed phrases and sentences with which to actually construct the or to extrapolate the rest of the grammar out of. And a lot of the this stuff for the motion pictures, when they were filling out all that Elvish dialogue, they I think they also had to get was it David Peterson? Did he also do that?
No, it was David Salo. Fun fact is I actually know David Salo from the Tolkien groups. He's the one who came up with, he has a book out too, the Gateway to Sindarin, but of course a lot of it is, he had to extrapolate from the sources and try to fill things out, as you say, because we don't have the actual stuff. It's also a big screaming debate in the Elvish language groups, because there's this one chap who's actually been going over the manuscripts, and he has this thing where, no, you can't do that. You shouldn't be extrapolating. All I can do is just to say what is actually in the materials. You shouldn't be trying to use it as a language. And these other people are want to be able to use it, compose things in it. So there's this big thing between, is that legitimate because you're not using the actual stuff. You're extrapolating from it.
Yeah.
I mean, you are using them, but you're filling in things. You're filling in blanks. So it's a big screaming debate, and I don't see anything wrong with doing that as long as you're open. That's what you're doing.
That reminds me of one of the earliest conlangs that actually got big, that were used specifically as international languages. They were Volapük and Esperanto. And the creator of Volapük, he was really tightly controlling of all his vocabulary, and he would not let anyone else dictate anything else. He was the guy, and nobody else could change it. It was his project, and that was that. Compared that to L.L. Zamenhof, who was very open to collaboration when he was creating Esperanto. And that's why, really why Esperanto has survived as an international language, and why Volapük is basically gone.
Okay.
Yeah, pity.
He was a jerk.
Yeah, that too.
Seems like it. Very finicky man.
Yeah. Well, possessive, greedy, avaricious,
jealous,
selfish.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, this is the when Tolkien was creating Elvish, a lot of what he actually used it for in the books was for names and place names.
Yeah, like the Grey,
Yeah, the which means a valley that has been carved out, or if we were to be poetic, Riven Dell.
Yeah, how common is that in fantasy? Because I can't think really of any other of the authors I'm aware of. They seem to just create random names. Maybe Lewis did a little bit of that in his space trilogy, maybe. Malacandra means...
Christopher Paolini actually created a relatively functional language in terms of the ancient language, and to a certain extent the dwarves. He actually, at the back of Aragon, he has an actual syntax, and at least 20 pages of syntax rules in the back of his first book.
Oh,
the book is, and I don't know how much help he had with that. He probably had quite a bit, since he was 14 at the time of writing it, and he published it when he was 16. But yeah, he has a detailed syntax thing. Let me go grab my copy real quick.
Well, I've created plenty of place names using my stuff. There's one place in particular that it was a city that I just called. What's going on?
So,
Yeah, all the place names in my novel have meanings.
Ah, I see. I see what's going on.
Oh, this chapter's serious.
yeah, and he was 16 at the time.
Oh, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Mhm. Yeah, when I was filling out my world, there's one place I just liked the sound of Riga, and then it turns out that's actually the capital of this country. So
Yeah.
I had to come up with a different etymology for it, otherwise that would be bad. So I came up with this word Sazalgari, which means the far eastern mountains. But then I got the idea that because Hadvari is written from right to left, when the Aurorans came along and found the signs, they just they saw it as Rigazosa, and they shortened it to Riga
How did Rudzosa turn into Riga?
because it was too much. It was
So they just went-
Rigazosa. But then, and that's how Three Waters Nyuji became Jingyu. And by the time they got to Fasat, they'd figured it out. So Fasat is Fasat.
Okay.
They made progress.
Yeah, they learn.
Yeah, kind of how, the names of cities is something that's very interesting, at least to me. I think Hello Future Me did a video about, like, coming up with names for stuff a little bit ago, and I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah. For example, in my novel, Tharmalon means the settlement of the palm trees. Tharm is a palm tree. The castle Tserthaton means the river's shield. Tserth is a river, and the language, of course, also has initial consonant mutations.
Mm-hmm.
It would.
Mm-hmm.
Bloody Celts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got all sorts of things. I have Kalmar is named after the river Kalmar, which is itself named after a city in my native land of Sweden.
Oh, nice.
Norvel is a shortened form of the North Vale. Blackpool is just named after a terrestrial feature. Newport
Dublin.
is obvious. Two Lakes and Last Watch are also just boring words.
I'm perpetually amused by Newfoundland. They just call it Newfoundland.
The Australians are
Oh, you mean
very.
Newfoundland?
Yeah, Newfoundland.
Yeah, the Australians are kind of unimaginative. Northern Territory, Western Australia, South Australia. And New Zealand has North Island, South Island.
Well, Tolkien created a whole bunch of Elvish languages.
I think the main two dialects are like Sindarin and Quenya.
Yeah, Quenya was meant to be like Elvish Latin. That's what they speak off in Valinor, and it has a lot more open consonants or open vowels, not so many consonants at the end of the sentences. Whereas Sindarin was the language that they spoke in Middle Earth and there's a lot more consonants at the end.
Yeah, it gets messy. There's primitive Elvish. It branched off into the language of the Noldor, the Vinyar, and the Teleri. The Teleri, some of them stayed in Middle Earth, and their language became Sindarin. Meanwhile, Quenya developed in its own way and dropped some consonants and did other things. It's a lovely language. Al Qualonde.
Mm-hmm.
Ainu Lindale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
What is the battle of? What was the Battle of Unnumbered Tears? I just love that. What was the Elvish name for that? I just remember that name because it's such an evocative title.
I think it's Nearnaith Arnoidiad or something like that. I think. I'd have to look it up, but I think it's something like that.
Nearnaith Arnoidiad.
Oh!
Yep.
Don't me.
I don't know. I'm more partial to the Dagor Bragolach.
Oh, that's
Battle
good.
of the Sudden Flame.
Now probably
Dagor Nuin Giliath.
Yeah, I spent several years making up Celtic languages, so I like that sound too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm still just so sad that the Dagor Dagorath is no longer canon.
How dare you?
Yeah, it's kind of considered the Middle Earth apocrypha now, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it's such a cool idea. Melkor breaking free, and then all of Middle Earth goes up to duke it out one last time.
Yep. Everybody. I don't know. I had this idea for the idea that, you know, if because the gift of Eru to men was that they get to leave Arda, but Melkor is bound outside of Arda. So I thought, you know, what if what happens is that Melkor has been collecting the souls of men as they escape, and he's been, you know, gathering them, and they're going to be his army when he comes back.
Yeah, I think Iluvatar would intervene and prevent Melkor from getting everyone's souls, though.
Mm. Well, yeah. I mean, there were some who escaped before he was banished, like Beren and Luthien.
I imagine that at least if that the men of Numenor who went down would probably be serving Melkor.
Yeah, the so-called Kingsmen. Yeah,
definitely those guys.
Yeah.
Anything else? Whose harmonica is playing in the background? Out of curiosity.
Oh, let me turn my radio off if that's what that is. But I have my earplugs on, so you shouldn't be hearing stuff. But half a moment.
Oh, I don't know. Have you seen that Mitchell and Webb sketch?
There we go. Sorry.
Of when the explorers coming up in new lands.
Hmm.
And the first there's like four of them, and the first one is Columbus landing in the New World, and he says, this is wonderful. There is a westerly route to the Indies, and I hereby name these islands the West Indies. East Indies, surely. What?
Yeah.
We went west to find them. They're to the west of us, therefore they're the West Indies. Well, yeah, but I thought the point of this mission was to prove that the Earth is round, right? So if
no. Sorry.
What?
Carry on.
So yeah, if the whole point of the mission is to prove the world is round, so if these are the Indies, which incidentally is something else we're going to have to talk about later, then they must be the East Indies, the most easterly point of the Indies.
Yeah.
Do you see this?
Yeah. Well, just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that it's not true that Columbus. Well, am I echoing?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah. How's this? Oh, I still hear myself echoing. Maybe it's because I've got my earphones on.
Possibly.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Columbus did not want to prove the Earth was round. He only decided to go the other direction because he was really bad at math and thought it wouldn't take too long.
Yeah,
and he got lucky that there happened to be a continent or two in the way.
Yeah. His critics were right when they said that, because they said the Earth was bigger than he thought it was. So the people who were criticizing him were right. It had nothing to do with the Earth being round, because that was known for millennia.
Well, yeah, but then the sketch doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
I just want to make sure, just in case anybody watching or listening, because you'd be surprised how many people buy into that whole flat Earth thing, where 2.5 seconds of Googling would disprove it.
Yeah.
Yep. I guess Christopher Columbus failed geography like Sansa and John.
Oh, wow, that's impressive.
How so?
Because it means that John and Sansa are as great as Christopher Columbus, at least when it comes to geography.
I love that that's
That's
an
a pretty
actual,
low bar, if we're being honest.
I love how that's an actual thing in the script notes of episode. That's an actual thing in the script of of season 8, episode 6. That just boggles my mind.
Yeah, like Sean is looking at Danny in season 7 and thinking, she's cute as a bug.
Oh my! Wait, what?
Yeah, he's looking at her and he's thinking, she's cute as a bug. And Danny's thinking, maybe he's not as stupid as he looks.
Wow.
Yep, it's in there.
Wow. That's not how I would phrase it. Wow.
Is this off topic?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very off topic, but yeah. Well, kind of the thing is, like, anything else you guys want to chat about, like, in terms of, like, fantasy conlangs before we get into, like, your guys' conlangs and
How about how they're used? We're not writing dictionaries here, we're writing novels.
Yeah. Like I say, you don't have to create a whole language. You can follow the example of George R.R. Martin and have a few words and phrases so long as they're internally consistent. You can do that. Lewis also does something like that in Out of the Silent Planet, where he's got the language of the Rossa, whatever they're called. So you can use that example. There's even it's not so good, but you can use the Lapine. There's a Lapine language in Watership Down. I don't know about the films, but in the books, and there's a little glossary at the end.
There's a little bit in the films where they'll include like stuff like Ausla, Eliel, little words like that.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not sure it's not really a language. There's only like one verb in the entire book. But
most people honestly remember. I don't know if that's going to be the takeaway for most people after watching Watership Down.
Yeah.
I think, like, Bobby, why are my pants ants feeling funny? That's because you were... Because
you're a furry, son.
No, son. Your pants are full of human excrement because of the fact that you just watched a bunch of bunnies kill each other.
Can I mention an amusing use of a not really conlang? It's called it's a children's book called the Secret World of Og, OG, that existed. This was written like in the 60s or 70s. I think probably the 60s.
So before the original gangsters.
Yeah, so they spoke, before that, I think. so like, the only word in the language is Og, and it's spoken by these green people but they're stealing comic books and they're trying to talk American, and they're getting like culturally Americanized, and they're like quoting from westerns and all this stuff. So there's a pretty heavy element of satire. So, but it's still a children's story though. So it's amusing. Maybe you had to be there, but it's amusing.
Okay.
I don't know. There was that other children's book, The Hobbit,
Yeah.
but I think we've already covered that.
Does The Hobbit really have that many constructed languages in it?
Just some names.
Yeah.
Unless you count Tralalalally.
Tra-la-la-lally, dear down in the valley. Yeah, the animated Hobbit's music is really bad. Chip the glasses, crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. So carefully, carefully with the plates. Blood the knives and bend the forks. Smash the bottles, burn the corks.
It's mildly scary. You can remember that.
Yeah. Mildly scary? Why not? Why not utterly terrifying?
Ouch.
Carefully, carefully with the plates. Yeah, it's partially because like I have an eidetic memory when it comes to certain things, but not when it comes to others. Yeah. So Archon Langs and why we constructed them. Dudley, it's up to you guys. Like how are some ways?
Oh.
I don't think you want. I guess we could do a karaoke stream sometime.
Oh yeah.
That would be quite fun.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, we could. We'll figure that. We'll figure something out. Yeah, talk about your conlangs, how you constructed them, and why you felt like you wanted to include them, and why they enhanced the story for you guys.
All right. I'll start us off. So my big ones are Hadvari and Masada. I haven't shown any Masada here yet, but we'll get to that eventually. For Hadvari, I was trying to come up with something that was as completely different from English as possible, but still reasonably human readable. So I got a whole bunch of different. I completely changed around the grammar. I added a whole bunch of sounds that that we don't have. Just messed everything up. And I got one of the things I was really proud of was the way that word order functions in. Because you would what they would do would you have you just hang on, I'm going through my notes. We have there's three words: loy, to eat; z, which is a man; and umui, which is food in the accusative case. So you can say something like loy zi umui, which is just the man eats the food. But if you change the order of the words, if you reverse it, umui zi loy, that indicates a question. But if you say zi loy umui, that means that's a command. The man must eat the food. And I have a couple of other ways of doing it. And so if you change the order of the words with maybe a few extra sentence particles, that changes the meaning of the sentence in subtle ways.
So like if it's like a jailer saying the prisoner must eat or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something there. But because of this, because the focus on the order of the words is so crucial to the understanding, when you're speaking in formal speech, you cannot drop any words. You have to say every single thing, as opposed to some other languages that allow you to drop words that are understood, like the subjects or things that you've mentioned a lot. By the time you would know what you're talking about. No, when you're speaking Hadvari, you say everything, and you fucking like it.
So it's not what they call pro-drop. You can't drop pronouns
Exactly.
and stuff.
It is completely non-drop. Yep, very strongly non-drop.
So it's so presumably it's not very highly inflected then.
Not really. I mean, obviously people will encode certain emotional information through their tones, as human beings generally do, but the tone is not morphologically or grammatically significant.
But I mean grammatical inflections like morphology and stuff.
Well, there's plenty of affixes. There's lots of little particles you add on to the words.
Is it agglutinative? Do you just add affixes on?
Yep, agglutinative.
Pretty much maybe with slightly changing them sometimes, depending on the sounds around it.
I don't think I have a lot of allophonics in this language. No, not so much.
Oh, okay, that's nice and straightforward. Because some languages will do that, like Hungarian will do that. Some with certain suffixes.
Yeah. And then there's the pronouns. And that's one of the big things about Hadvari is their system of pronouns. They are a very, very segmented culture. They have a very very distinct hierarchy. So when you are addressing yourself or we're addressing other people, you affix a number to the pronoun based on your social precedence. So the most superior would add the number ha, which is 1, to their, and you would go essentially down to 5. No one goes down lower than 5. Ha, ku, ji, de.
You don't want to be then.
No, de. Yeah, de is 5. If you are putting de in front of your pronoun, you are dirt beneath your boots.
No de, please.
Although, since Hadvar has started to become a bit of an empire, they've started exporting their language to another area called Illyria, and the Illyrians they don't really have that same culture, so they just they don't really include that same rigid focus on numerical precedence when they do their pronouns. And since that is where my protagonist Paul learned to speak Hadvari, he speaks in a very, very informal way that is almost offensive to regular Hadvari. And you better believe I am going to milk that for all the comedic potential I can.
Oh, I definitely think that is an excellent idea.
He offends me.
I don't even know who this guy is, and I'm already taking to Twitter to cancel him. Oh, it's definitely something they would do. They are a very thin-skinned people.
Don't get your numbers wrong.
Yeah. And then Masada. Masada, I created Masada almost on a dare. I saw this article that said apparently that French is the most sexist language on Earth because it has a gender system that divides everything into male and female genders.
It's not the only one, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Spanish has that exact same system. It's literally derived from the same.
That's exactly
German.
Not a word about that.
German. Don't get me started on German.
Oh, German at least has a neuter.
But that doesn't even do worse because
Although you can't really get much more progressive than Swedish, because Swedish had a male, a female, and a neuter, and they combined their male and female into a single common gender.
Yeah, but here's what German does: is it makes girls neuter. Das Mädchen, and you if you've ever read Mark Twain's That Awful German Language, he gets into this. Where is the German system of gender? And he has an imaginary dialogue. Where is the onion? She is in the kitchen. Where is the refined and beautiful English young lady? It has gone to the opera.
Yep.
So yeah,
but yeah, I saw this lady getting all huffy about French gender and stuff, and I said, you know what? I am going to create a language that has the most rigid binary gender system that I can possibly think of, and I am going to give it to the most progressive character in my book because fuck you, I can. You know, just as a middle finger to this lady who I've never met and will never meet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is so funny.
Yeah. Also, the Sapir Whorf hypothesis is bullshit. Fuck you, fight me.
Oh man. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it.
Mm-hmm. I'm flattered.
Oh man, that's fantastic. I love it. Oh man.
Yep.
That is fantastic. Oh man, that's great. Yeah. All right, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I gotta say, as I was going through Masada, one of the things actually that I don't really see a lot of people doing is how they handle characters who are speaking when the conlang is their native language and they're not really familiar with the common tongue or English. And Batu in question, the extremely progressive character, when I have her speaking in English, she is speaking in this very strange, strange speak does. And you sort of understand that that's sort of the word order that she's comfortable with. Because when she's talking with, people that she's just around, she talks normally. Do you think we should have used a translator there? That really didn't come off right. Oh, I probably sounded like an idiot. Just to get the sense that this is sort of a person who's trying to figure out this strange new language, Auroran, because English is boring, and is just doing her best. And as she gets corrected, you slowly start to chip away at that strange manner of speaking. And you see her visibly improving as the story goes along. And I think that's something that really comes up.
It kind of sounds a little bit like how Inkspren talk in Rhythm of War.
I think that's. I'm not able to comment on that yet, but I trust your intuition.
Yes.
But I also get to turn it on its head, because since Paul picked up the Hadvari through a very improper dialect and had no formal training, he had to basically pick it up on his own. Whereas Batu has had formal learning. So later on, when they speak Hadvari with each other, Batu is the one speaking in a very eloquent and flowing speech, and Paul is the one who way strange in talk does. just a little flip the script on him.
That's interesting. I like it.
You don't have an actual Auroran language
I am not
constructed yet.
I've not spoiled a thing. I have not said anything. I just said Inkspren talk like that.
Stuff happens in the end.
Stuff happens.
No, you don't say.
Yes.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Actually, something that would be interesting to question. Has anyone actually let real world languages influence their conlanging?
Yes.
I haven't really done much. I'll just mostly just use phrases and try to keep similar nomenclature.
I don't know, like does anyone who here speaks a second language?
Yes.
I speak Spanish, sort of.
On
French,
paper, I speak
Spanish.
German, but don't ask me to.
Italian, Spanish, French, German. Mostly I read them, though. Not, I can sort of speak them. And I definitely have made up languages based on real languages. That's a whole, not real languages. That's not the correct term. Natural languages, or natlangs.
Yeah.
But and languages based on natlangs are called a posteriori. But when you're making up languages not for a story but just for their own sake, then if you're inspired by a real life language, you want to create a language that belongs to that group. Oh dear, I'm not echoing, am I? Let's see. How's this? For example, I wanted to make up Celtic languages, so I spent years and years working on Celtic languages. And the Celtic languages have also influenced what are called a priori languages that I just made up more or less off the top of my head. And that comes up in my novel.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got Spanish, Swedish, and Russian, and a few scraps of Mandarin, but not really very much. And I got to say, one of the things that really got me about Russian was, first of all, the way their cases and their affix particles just work in really, really interesting ways. But there's a very specific construction, a phrase construction. If you want to say, I have an apple, you would say, U меня есть яблоко. But what you are literally saying is, at me, there is an apple.
Oh, that's like Irish.
Yep. Yep. So it turns out the habere construction, using the verb to have, is actually pretty rare in the world. You know, so there's all these different ways that you can come up with phrases. You know, you could say, the apple is of me, the apple is to me, or I am and the apple.
The apple is with me is another one.
Yep. And it just went learning that one particular phrase just came up with it just kicked open the door that you could come up with all these different ways you could, take your own grammar and bend it completely out of shape, and people would understand it because that's just how they say that particular phrase. Because Russian does have a verb to have, iметь, but you don't use it in that context. You only use that for abstract things like я имею право быть здесь. I have the right to be here. But you wouldn't say у меня есть право быть здесь. At me, there is a right to be there. What are you talking about? Идите в ГУЛАГе.
So that needs to be something physical. If it's меня, it's something physical that you're holding in your possession.
Yeah.
Ah.
And whatever you do, don't say я имею яблоко. That is gross. You do not have the apple like that.
Ew.
Go in gulag.
It's like ich bin gut in German. You don't say I am good. You say ist gut. It is good.
Yeah. Like you wouldn't say ich bin ein Berliner. You would say ich bin Berliner.
I mostly remember primary songs in German. I mean, those are the only things that I know because my mother spoke taught us some of the songs in German, like Ich bin ein Kind von Gott, der mich zur Welt geschickt. That sort of thing.
Die Gedanken sind frei.
See, I only know the basic things in German. I know Guten Tag, Auf Wiedersehen, Ich bin keine Nazi. Wouldn't let me through customs if I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
No idea why. Yeah, there's actually I speak Swedish with this one particular cashier at my workplace. Whenever they call us up front to bag, I always make sure I'm at that guy so we can chatter away in Svenska. And all of a sudden, the other day, this other lady at my store came up and said, "Hey, we just got a new German girl. Isn't that great?" And I said, "Okay, I don't speak German. What? But I saw you talking German with that other guy." That's Swedish.
Ah.
Did you just assume my language?
Well, one Teutonic language is like another.
Yeah. Well, North Germanic, East Germanic,
West Germanic.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. What's a few war crimes between friends? I mean, the Swedes were basically selling them iron all the way through the end. So
Yeah. Oh, fun fact. The chap who translated Tolkien's works into Swedish apparently was not even a closet Nazi. He apparently was during the war, he was a Nazi. Then afterwards, he was like he'd never been a Nazi.
So, like the guy in Hunters.
Yeah, the guy Olmarks. Olmarks is the name.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah. And apparently the first Swedish edition of Lord of the Rings was pretty bad.
Yeah. There's my Swedish friend passed away some years ago. Was going on about that too. He has whole examples. I don't remember offhand what they were, but remember something about trees bellowing or something like that.
Now, I'll have to talk to some of my relatives about that, see if I can get some answers about that.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about whether Merry or Pippin killed the Witch King. I think Merry killed the Witch King.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see like how prime drafts originally went through.
Wait, don't move on yet. I haven't done my Drake and I done my other languages yet.
All right, go for it.
But in my case, it gets messy because I started doing conlangs long before I even thought of writing a novel, and before they were called conlangs. I think the term conlang goes back to 1991, if I remember correctly, from David Peterson's book.
So you went full Tolkien, didn't you?
I go even back before I was reading Tolkien.
No, but I mean, like you created the conlang before you wrote the book.
Yeah, long before. I created conlangs because starting like in 1972, I've got a whole nice little document about this, by the way. The history of my conlanging is some 20 odd pages of it, and it goes all the way back to 1972 when I was like 8 or 9 or something. And apparently I tried to make a language for the Okefenokee Swamp where Pogo Possum lives, but it only has a few words in it. Like the government is something like D Gumeent. I put accent marks in it. It's not really a language. And then I was reading these books like The World's Chief Languages by Mario Pei and the various Teach Yourself books. Berlitz for Travelers. That doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. They're not for travelers anymore. So you have probably never... you may have seen Berlitz phase books, but probably not for travelers unless you've got them secondhand or something. But yeah, it was like a totally different world back then. No Wikipedia or any of that stuff. Yes, there was no World Wide Web when I was a lad. So
deprived.
Thou
How you survived.
Thou art, as EFAP would describe, an old man.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So when I started writing novels, it was because I wanted to have, and I was creating worlds as well. So when I started trying to write novels, it was in order that there should be a world, in order to like show the world, right? So the world came first, and perhaps it's not surprising that my first attempts were kind of in my late teens and early 20s were a little bit rubbish. One of them was based on a D&D, a Dungeons and Dragons game, so you can tell how good that one was. And then I was trying to write these ones where these people from our world landed on their world. It actually had an interesting concept of different planes of reality, and stuff like that. But the execution, meh. So that's what my novel is for, so that I can have a world where people, so that I can exhibit the world where the people speak these language and have this culture that I've been working on. That's the really, really, really short version, because for example, there's a country called Terrania. I invented it in the over 45 years ago, and some things have stayed the same in the language. Some words have stayed, but the concept keeps getting rewritten, especially during this period, which I call the Elvish phase, where I wanted to be Tolkien. So I started adding elves and dwarves, and you couldn't walk 2 feet without tripping on a dragon, and that. Then later on I got rid of that, but I kept some of the details that I came up with from that period, because some of them were good. So in the novel I'm working on now, there are maybe half a dozen languages. There's Turanian, which is like the classical language, and that's what the Holy Scriptures called the Waramod is written in that. And because I've combined a number of different phases, a number of different iterations of Turanian, I've got things from the early period, things from the middle period, and things from the later period, sort of combined. One interesting thing is that there are different types of verbs. There are stative verbs for a state. There are active passive verbs for the active passive, and the action, and the passive is often used instead of the active with an ergative case. Ergative means by, the agent, refers to the agent. It's got perceptive verbs like seeing, also feeling, thinking, and so forth. And it's got verbs referring to motion or change. So these have somewhat different endings. And of course it's got moods, needless to say. It's got moods, and the noun system is based largely upon vowel changes. And there are 3 basic. For example, God is an. But if you want the dative case, it's un, and the genitive case is een. And on top of that, you can add a definite article at the end, which makes it andra, undra, or indra. And you can combine, and the other cases are formed from those 3 cases. So if you know those forms and you know the plural, then you can figure out the rest of the paradigm. So anyway, that's like used as a classical language in the novel, and people will quote things in it. There's also Sondaranian, because that's the language of the people who run the empire. There's the Sondaranian Empire, and they borrow a lot from Turanian. Whoops. Oh, sorry, that was a notification. I hope that didn't come up on the...
Nope.
You didn't hear that. Good. Notification. What was I saying? There's also the language Kalaman. Well, actually, there are also languages called Mindarite languages. There's a country called Mindar, and they traveled from Mindar to the island of Oro, and there are a couple of countries. There's Ichalumu, and there's also Darzaz. And Ichalumu is the language where the protagonist comes from. And that's the language with the consonant mutations. Like Ichalumu, the H at the beginning, that's a mutation. So that was, I guess that was sort of imitated from Sindarin. Sondaranian is kind of agglutinative. It uses lots of prefixes, and it has strictly vowel final syllables. But it also has prenasalized consonants. So it has words like mawa, with an before the b, mawa, mawa, but it's two syllables. There's not a lot written in. There's not a lot of that in the novel, but except for names, and there are a lot of names. Because that's the other thing, that in fantasy sometimes people get really kind of messy in terms of names, because they just have random sounds that sound cool, and it can work from a story point of view. It can work, but if you're a language person, then you're like, oh no, you're just using like
hives. Yeah, it's like if you're using, like, for me, like, I'll use, like, for a lot of, like, the dragon names in my books, I'll be pulling from Greek mythology as my nomenclature usually, and I'll use kind of like an AE Targaryen sound for, like, the royal family, and kind of use, like, more like English sounding names for some of the other nomenclature, though there are kind of things of, like, more African sounding names for people in the South.
Cool.
So
yeah, it works. Yeah, it works. Like GWRM does that, and the Targaryen names work pretty well. The Westerosi names, I'm not so sure, like Petai or
Petai.
They take Peter and turn into a Y, and it's things like that I'm not so sure of. But not to mention how did because English, the English language arose in a certain historical context. It rose because these Germanic people moved to England, then they borrowed words from Latin, then they borrowed names that originally came from Greek or Hebrew. So there's a reason why, there's a cultural and historical context why the English nomenclature arose, and how does that translate into a different fantasy world? So, but it works for the reader, though. I mean, if they're not thinking too much about languages and stuff, it works for the average reader. So you can do that. It'll bother like one person in 10, maybe, or one person in 100. I have a whole the whole document. I don't think it's possible to post documents and comments in YouTube, is it? Not that I know of.
You can post a link in the comments.
Yeah, I mean the only thing.
There's a comment, like there's a character limit, I imagine, but.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be able to copy and paste the whole document. It's like 20 pages, so I wouldn't be able to copy and paste the whole thing to the whole document to yeah, that wouldn't work. What I could do is maybe upload it somewhere and then post a link to where I uploaded it.
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
Sure enough.
Alrighty. Drake, anything you want to add?
Well, I've got Zach too, and so far all these languages have been very human-centric. Down with humanity, kill all humans. I built my language from the ground up, and I sort of had to because this language was actually devised by dragons, and
Cool.
they have no lips. And I thought to myself, how would a species without lips come up with their own phonetics? And so I just held my hand over my mouth, A, B, nope, out, C, D, E, F, out, and basically just eliminated all sorts of sounds that we would have in our dialects from their library and then constructed their words from the remainder.
So no labiodentals and no bilabial consonants.
They can emulate it. It's like what their language Zachtu means is literally holy tongue, and because of their biology, they can bend their tongue around in order to emulate other languages. That's how they generally talk. But mostly, while they can speak normal human, it's unknown what that language exactly is, or even if it's actually what they're saying. Sort of the translation hypothesis going on. The idea is that they don't use human words because their language has a lot more context in far less sounds, like something you may have heard if you've been paying attention to science sorcery. It's basically what it literally means is something that did something, went away, and will come back and do it again. What exactly it did is left up to interpretation, but given that all that's left in existence, no stars, no sky, it's just this sliver of island in the middle of a void, it's implied that it was bad news. And so the Zong really look down on humanity for reasons that largely have to do with their backstory. Go read up on the accounts of Urios Shaktanai for more on why that is. But suffice it to say, they're not a big fan of humans and will speak their own language with proper nouns, specific events, species names, in place of human names. This is why the humans call things like the original lycanthrope invasion the Old War. The Zongrit refused to call it anything because they lost 99% of their population and their species is unable to replicate itself. So they don't have a word for it out of contempt for it.
That is actually really clever. You know, like a weaponization of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
The what?
Like a weaponization of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Which is, I think I've heard of that, but
yeah, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is the idea that language, in the weak sense, that language influences how you think. In the strong sense, it's language controls how you think. The idea being that if your language does not have a word for a specific concept, you cannot think about that concept until such term is introduced to you through a different language.
Yeah, I have heard of that. It's very common in Orwellian stuff. And the idea behind that is there's a bunch of different things in Zachtu, like some other words that really elaborate on their character. Their weapons, crave. It's literally means hand or tool. A rule I have for my languages, nothing translates perfectly. Everything translates in the context of this word was invented by a dragon. And so hand, tool, tail, even eye, a tooth, it all falls under the Hreu umbrella. Anything that is used to accomplish a purpose is Hreu, though more contextually speaking, Hreu is technically the term they use for the weapons that they forge. Some other ones, Mjungrit, that's a fun one. Obviously, Zongrit is a word describing their species, and Mjungrit is the word that they use to describe other species. And because of the bad blood between the species, it's basically a racial slur at this point. It used to mean something different, which will come up way later down the road. But as far as it's used contextually, it's the species that makes sounds. It's a reference to how, while the Zongrit were going off to war and getting killed, the humans were having sex.
I know, dastardly humans. So the Zomgrits are basically incels.
The Zomgrits are a lot of things. The idea behind them is a species that's given so much and is sick and tired of being taken for granted. So anything that sort of fits that mold across history could be a reference to that. I mean, I kind of worry that people are going to think that the Zongrit are basically a reference to Blue Lives Matter, despite the fact that Blue Lives Matter is way younger than the concept of the Zongrit.
Yeah. I got to agree with Occupation Army's comment. Dragons being telepathic in fiction is kind of a cop-out. Actually, telepathy in general is just a cop-out for me. Because, you know, the reason that we have to speak is because we cannot directly implant our thoughts. And so the idea is that, like, if we could directly implant our thoughts one into the other, we could be able to communicate with each other. What makes you think that someone else's brain is capable of understanding the raw thought data that another brain puts in? You think you can just pick all of that stuff with, you know, all that and just stuff it into someone else's head and expect it's going to come out the same way? It will be incomprehensible. If you're lucky, it will just give you a migraine. If you're unlucky, it will shut your brain down.
Yeah, there's a cutscene in Dawn of War 2 where you kind of actually see that happen in real time, where it's the intro scene to where the level boss is a Tyranid Zoanthrope, that being the big Tyranid brain psyker that uses its mind to levitate because its arms are basically little piddly sticks. And it's like you see a bunch of flickering as you zoom in on its face. You see like flickers of its veins behind its head. It's pulsing cranium, and as you start seeing more flickers of darkness and whatever, the last scene you see is a completely desolated landscape. Nothing there but ruins and like green smoke in the air, and that is pretty much how the hive mind thinks. If you could read a zoanthrope's head, it basically translates to your planet is not going to be there in next month.
Yeah, I mean, I guess...
I wish I could pull that up, because it's really cool. It's a really cool idea of communicating concept with thought, rather than communicating A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because you're right, that's not how that works.
Yeah, telepathy is... You could use telepathy in interesting ways in science fiction or whatever, but linguistically it would be a call-out. I mean, you could use it, like, if people could abuse it, like the Blazes, it would be, like, pretty awful, actually. If someone evil with telepathic powers, I'm sure it's been done a million times. I'm sure it's been done a million times, where somebody abuses their telepathic power. So from that point of view, it would be interesting, but linguistically, it's like, nah.
Yeah, I agree, Space Junk. A species that born with telepathy, it would probably look on natural language like we look on sign language. Something that just, like, that doesn't make sense.
or doesn't communicate as clearly.
Yeah, I actually called.
Or like
I actually
Braille.
described this in my story. A character who's fluent in Zoctu says that trying to translate Zoctu literally is like describing color to the colorblind.
Well, I mean, a lot of colorblind people can see color. I mean, there's more to
but
being
it's like-
colorblind than just not seeing color. There's people that can't distinguish between different kinds of color.
Yeah,
No, like-
I know there's different like kinds of color blindness, but it's like try describing red to anyone. It's a very hard concept to get across. And trying to describe what a color is, it gets very circular very quickly. And so that's the idea, is that concepts don't translate well. And that's one of the rules I have for Zoctu. And so I try to think of some other words that really illustrate how they work. That's a really common one you'll hear across science and sorcery. Tcha is the Zongrit word for the lycanthropes. And given that I described lycanthropes earlier as having basically nearly exterminated the Zongrit species, it's supposed to sound like a guttural slur of contempt, because that's exactly what it is. The Zongrit don't want to waste more syllables on this repulsive species than they have to. And so it sounds like a spit.
Ta, 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 ta.
Yeah.
You'll actually notice this in my readings. When I'm reading from the perspective of Zongrit, they actually pronounce the words more correctly than the sort of human dialect of Zoctu, which Karius often uses.
Well, then again, when we're putting as much meaning as possible into our languages, you do run the risk of ending up like Itkuil.
Or we're having world builders disease.
Well,
Yeah, that's how
with-
real languages are coming.
with
That's how real languages
conlanging
happen.
specifically Itkuil. Itkuil was an attempt by a Junkikata to come up with a language that has as much semantic data as possible crammed into the most tight morphology as he could possibly get it. So there's a particular example, Tramløy has marpuktok, which in English means, on the contrary, I think it may turn out that this rugged mountain range trails off at some point. So that's all that information mashed into that very, very small. Is something beeping?
Oh, my microwave, but you shouldn't be hearing that. My thingy is on.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I thought there was a bomb in my apartment again. I was going to have to drop out and fix that. But nope, all good. But yeah, then and then of course the problem is, of course, when you try and put all that semantic data in as and encode it in as few phonemes as possible, you know, your brain at some point you get to a place where your brain just can't handle it. You know, when you have all, you know, trying to hold all these different case tables and root and stem forms in your head, and it just, there's no way to put it in there on a you know, a man readable time frame. You know, and that's ultimately why, to me, the most interesting part of a language isn't necessarily its phonology, its morphology, its grammar, it's the pragmatics. It's how you actually use it in day-to-day conversation. Because we can come up with all these crazy head-breaking tricks of grammar. You know, oh, I can figure out how to flip my tongue backward and make this crazy sound that no other language on earth is good. That's all good and well, but how do you say good morning? How do you say please and thank you? how do you go down the street and order a pizza?
Do you say please and thank you? Not all languages necessarily do.
Would it be rude to say please and thank you in certain circumstances? I don't know. Language and culture are two closely intertwined things. And so the pragmatics is what's really going to add that spice to your world.
Have you ever
Speaking of
made
pragmatics and spice and culture, that's probably an interesting segue to conlang vulgarity.
Oh no.
Have you ever really taken time to think about what it means to call somebody a motherfucker? And why we do that? Obviously, it's a reference to Oedipus, but as I broke it down, the reason something is vulgar in a society, Shadowversity actually did a video basically on this sort of thing, but in a medieval context. Vulgarity is determined by your cultural perspective.
Oh man, I used to have this whole book about how to swear in every single language. God, I gotta go dig that up somewhere sometimes.
Awesome. I had a book about how to swear in every language. Where'd that go?
Man, you know what it is? One of my old roommates probably stole it. Yeah, it sounds like something they would fucking do, wouldn't it? And but yeah, there's a difference about all the different aspects of that certain cultures find offensive or taboo and put that into their swears, like how it's just all sexual, or if it's very specifically religious. In Middle English, one of the most offensive things you could say was to swear by God's hooks, like by the nails that held Christ to the cross.
Yeah.
And you'd say God's hooks, or as it eventually became Gadzooks.
Yeah, Shad actually
this thing that just becomes just is like something ridiculous to us. Oh, Gadzooks and thunderclaps and blast and fiddlesticks. And just think that there was a time when such a thing would have gotten you chased out of town with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah. Now we have the end.
There would have been people, genuflecting for dear life if they heard you saying that.
Which kind of makes me think a lot of like British swear words like sod and bugger are related to homosexuality, which is probably a holdover from medieval days where that was not okay. Yeah, not good time for humanity. That.
Well, they did invent universities, eyeglasses, a whole bunch of things, vernacular literature. It wasn't all bad. Well, Shakespeare's from the 16th century, but the Middle Ages were no worse than most other periods. That's just a myth or something.
Yeah, all ages are dark ages.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Relatively speaking, I suppose.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep, God's wounds.
Yeah, so when you're constructing vulgarity for your language, you need to know, at least in a world building context, roughly speaking, what your culture abhors.
Yeah, I don't have much of that, but I do have characters saying Suara accursed, because Suara is the name for the big bad in their cultures. I do have that, but not an awful lot. An awful lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah. I have a minor language that doesn't really get a lot of airtime, I guess, but it's just off in the corner. I got it rattling around in my notes, but I'm planning to have it appear sort of briefly as like a prelude to this battle where one soldier is riding around in the front, shouting these strange things, and a guy is translating for the audience. He says he's saying Oh my. He's saying if there is anyone in this that is anyone here with the oh dear me, the courage to face him in single combat. And the guy that he's translating to says, is that everything he's saying? And he says, well, there is a bit more, but that is the basic gist of it.
That reminds
It's a language of rich insults, you see.
That reminds me of this story from France where an envoy, I think from Switzerland, was saying all this rude stuff to the king of France, and it got translated into a whole bunch of flowery compliments. And so the chap says, "You didn't translate what I said," and the translator replies, "No, but I translated what you should have said."
Oh, the rogue translator problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Missandei does the same thing in Song of Ice and Fire. She makes everything. This chap's saying all this rude stuff to and about Daenerys, and Missandei makes it all sound lovely and charming.
Or
And
at
of course,
least
she knows exactly
polite.
what he's been calling her.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
reap what you sow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, shouldn't have sold an army to her.
Yeah, one thing that one can use apart from vulgarity, actually this is a thing that Carl Saylor mentioned earlier about it's really rude to use the wrong form. You don't want to call someone like with something, a pronoun plus det at the end, because that would be rude. And Sandaranian has developed a whole glob of forms depending on who's talking to who, and are children talking to parents? Are you talking to a superior? How superior is the superior? Are you of the same sex or of different sexes, etc.? So it gets really, you could get into big screaming trouble for using the wrong prefixes. And that would be just as bad in their culture as cussing at them.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been posting it in the chat. If you guys if anybody has any questions, like about this topic or any other topic, please just shoot the question in. We're interested to hear your thoughts and questions to the people in the chat. There's currently 7 people watching. We'll actually take probably like the next 10, 15, 18 to 20 minutes on it. I got to get going to Smudcast in a few minutes, but I'm down to answer any questions y'all have.
Nihilus
To answer
Nephilim.
Nihilum's question, yes.
Sure. Yes.
Fair enough.
The answer is yes.
Alas.
Poor Yorick. I knew him well.
I knew him Horatio. Not I knew him well, I knew him Horatio. A fellow of
And
infinite jest,
now
most excellent
he's
fancy.
boned.
He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times, I know not how oft. Here hung those lips that I have kissed. And now, how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. That's about as much as I can
See,
pull
can
off.
Can I share a screen just a moment to show something off?
Sure.
Okay, it'll take a moment, but so people can still go on asking questions.
Yeah, keep going.
Oh no, why is Chrome doing this?
I had a question for Drake, actually, about the dragon language.
Go
Did
for
you
it.
ever think about not just subtracting sounds that dragons can't make, but think about certain sounds that dragons can make but humans can't?
Yeah, well, there's the problem. I can't make the sound. So they do have sounds like that. In fact, there's a really long string of like a 60 character long stream of guttural snarls and whatnot. That's basically how it's described. And it's basically the Zaktu equivalent of fuck thee and my mother. It's this long stream of profanity. You actually see it a couple times in the later chapters.
Well, there is. Who here has seen Titus Andronicus?
Oh, is this the thou hast undone our mother?
Yes.
Villain, I have done thy mother. Yeah. Shakespeare invented the your mama joke.
Yep.
I think it
Have
probably
you considered
antedates him.
Stovazul from Skyrim is an inspiration? Not really. I've tried to play Skyrim a couple times and I could just never get into it.
I just can't get into. I can only like watch certain like RPGs, like Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, I basically just use the phonetic tricks that I described. It's like figuring out what sounds they can't make and then using the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Funny thing, the word Zongrit actually didn't come from my stories directly. It came from my brother was playing World Leaders at the time in 40k, and he wanted me to name his demon prince, and so I called it Zongrit because I noticed that each of the 4 Chaos Gods has lots of different letter combinations that they like using a lot. And so I basically took a bunch of corn letters that corn characters like using and slammed them together. And that is how Zongrit was born.
So, any thoughts on
I
having
reverse engineered a language.
Nice.
Yeah, changing languages, how they change over time. Yes, that is a interesting thing. I mean, first of all, the thing you're working on has to have the significant enough time scale to actually show such a thing if that's going to actually turn up. Otherwise, it's just going to be buried in the appendices. But that does create an interesting opportunity to come up with the sound changes. And of course, all the things that were happening within the society to prompt those changes, because of course languages don't develop in a vacuum. So, yeah, different concepts that come up in your cultures, different the conflicts that are happening between other groups. Maybe they get invaded and pick up a bunch of other words. Maybe there's a spelling reform which changes how people pronounce older forms, like ye old. That's not supposed to be ye. That's just because they couldn't find a letter for th, and they hadn't figured out the th digraph yet.
Yeah, it was actually, it's actually derived from, I think it's actually derived from the thorn, the kind of thorn. Weird, it's like a P, but it goes above and below the line.
Yeah.
And that was used still in Middle English.
So what exactly are you trying to show?
Icelandic, along with
So what are you trying to show, Count Balerion? I see only a blank black screen.
I'm trying to show my new Terranian script. No, not that. I'm trying to show Terranian New Year. Supposedly, StreamYard is showing a window.
It is.
I don't know. This thing worked fine in Firefox, but for some reason, it doesn't seem to be working in Chrome.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Because Firefox messed up my.
Yeah. Any other questions from the chat?
Let me try. Maybe I'll try one more time. No, stop screen. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, we'll continue for we'll take one more question and then we'll have to conclude things. Until then, let's fill the time. I guess what are some of your favorite con lengths in fiction period? What are some of the things that you liked?
Is it coming up now?
Yes. Now it is.
Oh, script.
Oh man, I should have gotten some of mine out. But yeah, this is pretty cool.
Here's another one.
Is there So what's the design behind it? What's the is there a method behind how the consonants get put together?
How long?
Because I see
Probably a
the P
while.
looks like something that's been doubled.
I
And
think what happened was I took an earlier version of the script and I kind of prettied it up a bit with a line on top, and I kind of put in some nice little curves and things. Here's a little passage in a calligraphic version of the script. Hopefully this is that visible. I've
Yeah, we can see it. I think Hebrew actually has a similar thing going on where it's just a line and the words are sort of drawn off of it.
you mean Hindi?
It could be.
Devanagari.
There's one
Yeah,
language I know
Devanagari.
that works like that.
Arabic. Arabic does
No,
that.
Arabic is
That
the other way
might-
around.
that could be it.
Arabic is the line is at the bottom in Arabic, and here it's on the top. It's a little bit like Devanagari, but then in the calligraphic version, it's nice and curved. Well, when I say nice and curved, it ought to be nice and curved. And if I were a real native speaker, it would be nice and curved, but I'm not, so it isn't. I did the best I could, though.
Well, how long would it take? It kind of depends, but I imagine quite a while. I imagine to come up with a new language. Like, how long did it take you guys to come up with yours?
It starts with one word and then you just make more as you need them. And because my stories are in a perpetual state of draft, I don't have to worry about how long it takes to make it because I'll make what I need and then be done.
Well, it really depends, because if you're just trying to, it depends what you're doing it for. If it's just a very simple thing you just need for a few things and then that's done, that's something pretty simple. You just come up with the grammar, a few affixes and roots, and then you're done. But if you're actually trying to make something really, really in depth out of it, that's very much an ongoing process.
I'm getting the.
Once you come up with the grammar, then you can start populating a dictionary of roots and affixes, and then build out a glossary of words and useful phrases to go in with it. But it really does depend what you need it for, how complete of a conlang you need.
Yeah, if it's going to be complete, you need to have a system of derivation. It can just be simple suffixes or prefixes, or else it can also involve various sound changes, consonant changes, or vowel changes. But you can just do it simply with suffixes if you want, as well. The serious languages take years, sometimes even decades, and sometimes they can even go through several iterations that are only vaguely related to each other. But then if you need a language for, like you say, a few words or names, you can create that in maybe an hour, maybe even a few minutes. But it depends also if it's related to other languages that you're using, then you have to have a system of sound correspondences. What corresponds to what, like father and Latin pater. So you need to, if it is related to the other languages, then most of the languages in my novel are related, except for Turanian.
Yeah, generally speaking, the thing that consumes most of the time is just the research. Looking up references. Things out like that.
Well, this has been a very fun stream. Thank you guys for coming. I will definitely post links to all of your guys' work in the description below so that people can find your work. So please pimp your stuff. Drake first, and then Carl, then Count Valerian.
Well, literally all my stuff is on your channel, so.
That works.
There is, of course, my book, which you can still pick up a copy of gratis. And there is my Patreon page with the link to my secret Discord server where you can watch me write in real time.
Nice. All right. Well, Count Valerian, do you have anything that you would like to pimp?
Well, I have some parodies. They're at the page. What? It's hammelstein.info/teunc.org. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of conlang stuff there. That's in my novel. There are bits of my novel um, posted to the Dunn's Discord, but there's also a lengthy history of my conlanging, which might be an interesting read, and that I think I posted there to advertise my content. That channel, but I can post it again there.
All right. Well, that seems like that's all for today. Much appreciated. Yes, of course, Neph. Happy to F, and glad that you all enjoyed it. We will see you guys later. Adios.
Have a riot.
See ya.
Holy shit. Okay, we're going. Go!